To the damaged and unappreciated, fame is the ultimate cure. Fame is the parent that never loved you, and fame is the God that will answer your every prayer. To many people, the only thing that can truly fit the bottomless pit inside themselves is the screams of thousands of fanatical fans that worship their every move. Fame is seen as the one true solution to the problems deep within themselves that they have had for their entire life. Fame is the only possible way to transcend whatever harsh reality that they suffer.
I want what they have so badly. To be perfect. To be loved from as many people as possible to make up for all my time spent suffering. I'm a star! Please, I'm a star!
The movie Pearl, starring Mia Goth, follows the life of a young girl during the middle of World War I in the 1918 influenza pandemic. Pearl lives on a Texas homestead and spends her days tending to her chores and taking care of her father, who is also paralyzed. Pearl has ambitious dreams, but her mother Ruth is strict, harsh, and disapproving towards almost everything she does. Pearl struggles to accept her current life and instead wishes for a way to escape it. She wants a way out from this suffocating reality, and she finds it within the silver screen at the local cinema. Pearl finds refuge in the images of the dancing chorus girls, and she begins to feel that this is her way out, the thing that will free her from her insufferable life. The thought of being a pretty girl in the picture, showered with admiration and adorned with fame, feels like the one true cure to the deep emotional suffering that she endures living with her mental issues. Throughout the film, Pearl fantasizes about her coming fame and clings to the vision of it as if it is the only thing keeping her alive. If this does not work out, her life will be over. There is no future if the one she imagines doesn't come to fruition. I think this movie is a perfect representation of why so many people cling to a vision of fame or this goal as if their life depended on it. Some people don't really care for fame at all, but instead desire recognition for their talents, while others, like Pearl, just crave this admiration and approval they find so comforting from fame. The goal isn't recognition for some talent or ability for people like Pearl. The goal is fame and approval itself, no matter the cost. This phenomenon isn't really recognized as one of the reasons that there are so many troubled people in Hollywood, but is instead viewed as a natural byproduct of it. And while, of course, many people were fine before Hollywood and, that toxic machine ended up giving them a bunch of problems with substance abuse and mental health, I do think the entertainment industry itself attracts a very specific kind of person. Like moths drawn to a flame, Hollywood's promise of fame and admiration draws the insecure and unappreciated right into its unforgiving grasp. From James Dean and Marilyn to Anna Nicole Smith and even Lady Gaga, this dream of being famous and adored is sometimes an attempt to make up for something that people can feel is lacking within themselves. A lot of times this stems from childhood trauma, like abuse and loss for James or Marilyn, or consistent bullying, like with Lady Gaga. Of course, I don't think everyone who is famous is like this, but I do think fame is extremely attractive to people who suffer deep emotional turmoil or who just wish for love and acceptance that they never really received. It almost becomes a cliche. A young, troubled artist who has an unfortunate childhood begins to escape it by imagining a future of fame and fortune where the pain they endure can now never reach them. The mindset of, one day I'll show them all how amazing I am and then I'll finally feel loved. This vision becomes solidified into a life goal, seen as the only thing that will truly save them. These artists become perfectionists and push themselves to the extreme, feeling they always need to prove something.
I was in the worst mood on the way here. I just get so revved up when I do these benchmark shows,
Yeah.
Because I start to think about all the people that have tried to stop me, and I get this, super intense, fury. Yeah, and then I think about how I don't really give a shit if people don't understand what I do. I just sometimes feel like a loser still, It's crazy because it's like we're at the garden, but I still sometimes feel like a loser kid in high school. And I just gotta pick my shit up. I gotta pick myself up. And I have to tell myself I'm a superstar every morning so that I can get through this day and be for my fans what they need for me to be. But sometimes I still feel like people are trying to destroy me.
Wanting to be the best or being a perfectionist is thought to be linked to childhood and either parents with too high of expectations or ones that didn't validate their children enough. It becomes a sort of subconscious attempt to resolve not having your needs met as a child, so you attempt to get them met from everybody else around you. It's no secret that some of the best artists in the industry are labeled or seen as tortured geniuses. These people are so incredibly hard on themselves and seem to never be pleased with their craft, working long hours but still never really feeling accomplished or good enough. I think one of the biggest examples of this is the tragic story of Marilyn Monroe. Jane Russell, who starred alongside Marilyn in the movie Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, once said this about her in an interview. Marilyn was very determined and an extremely hard worker. After a full day of shooting, she would stay back with her coach and keep going all night, while all I could think about was going home to have dinner and crash. When asked why she thinks Marilyn succumbed to the pressures of Hollywood and suffered so greatly, Jane said, "I know in my case, I was home. I didn't have to leave home and come to Hollywood. I lived just across the hills. I had 4 brothers and mom and all my high school friends. When times are good, it's wonderful, and when they are tough, you have them for support." I think that's very important. Marilyn didn't have any of that. She didn't have anyone or family to go home to. You see, Marilyn had a chaotic childhood. Her biological mother suffered deep psychological issues and was in and out of psychiatric asylums. Monroe ended up being moved to 12 different foster care families growing up and even spent time in an orphanage. It's also alleged that Marilyn Monroe herself suffered child abuse. Now, of course, any one of these factors by themselves is very traumatizing, but stability and love from your family up until the ages of 7 to 8 are crucial in determining the personality and mental health of the child for the rest of their life. When those vital years are plagued by chaos, abuse, or just a lack of real, unconditional validation and love, this can lead to this child or victim internalizing this feeling of low self-worth, or like they have to prove themselves to others. These people don't view love and appreciation as a given, but as something that they have to go out of their way to work for and something that is conditional. This can create the perfect conditions for the fame-driven celebrity to form. Nothing becomes a greater incentive to push yourself to be the best than this feeling that you aren't good enough, and that if you just worked harder, or if you become that idealized image of yourself that's in your head, then you will finally feel worthy and secure. Now, while I'm sure most of us as children at one point or another had this vision of being famous or thought it looked fun, I do think there's also a correlation between low self-worth and trauma and having that dream. I myself even noticed when I was growing up in a chaotic household and I was moving around all the time, I felt from time to time when I was very little that being famous or extremely successful would fix everything. It became almost like this fantasy that comforted me that I could escape into. Anything that could take me out of my crazy ass reality was always seen as attractive. I especially noticed this even more once I got older and began to heal and go to therapy, and this wish to become so huge, or the comfort that I would get from this thought of becoming huge, or even just being a people pleaser, always wanting validation from others, went away because I realized that, the validation doesn't come from outside of myself, it comes from within. Now, I think this almost obsessive craving for fame can stem from one of 2 factors. Either seeking validation, escaping your reality or mental trauma, or a mixture of both. Another film that I think represents this traumatic escapism perfectly is the movie Precious. Now, this movie is very dark and horrible, and before I go on, just a warning, I will be mentioning childhood essay and incest. The movie Precious follows the life of a young black girl growing up in Harlem in 1987. Precious lives with her verbally and physically abusive mother and has also been repeatedly raped by her own father, leading to 2 pregnancies and even becoming HIV positive. I think this film portrays escapism born from trauma perfectly. During the scenes, all we see is Precious staring at the ceiling and leaving her body into these visions of fame and celebrity. When reality is too hard to bear, she is comforted by visions of an idealized one. When thinking about this from a biological or even evolutionary perspective, this is a very clever adaptation. When you are under such inescapable mental and physical suffering, your brain creates a more attractive existence that you are then allowed to escape into. If your reality is too harsh, your brain offers you a new one to protect you. I think if this wasn't possible and we were all forced to be consistently present, a lot of us would not still be here today. I think this topic resonates with me so deeply, again, because I can sort of relate with it. I had a dad that was present, but at times wasn't as validating or loving and teased us instead of building us up. Now, I do also think it's important to say that I feel like the only reason that I am who I am today and I am so confident and I am okay was lots of DBT and because I had such a incredible mother that instilled a lot of confidence and self-worth within us. But when I was younger, before I kind of went through this healing, I was extremely OCD, I was a perfectionist, and I was very hard on myself. One thing I also noticed growing up in an affluent area when comparing myself to my friends was just how different our personalities were. I just remember seeing this real lack of drive or ambition compared to myself. And to give you context, we were children. Obviously, children aren't supposed to be so driven. We're supposed to be feeling free. But I felt like I was always an adult and I was always so hard on myself. I just remember seeing this and thinking that I pitied them and viewed them as incredibly amateur at everything. I didn't understand why they didn't push themselves so hard with everything they did and was shocked by their absence of perfectionism. The grace and understanding that they had for themselves was seen as weakness to me. And once I went to therapy, I noticed why they were this way. They were most likely raised with stability and unconditional validation from both parents. This instilled from a very young age that they are good enough as is and that they don't have to prove themselves constantly to deserve acceptance. Love isn't transactional to them. I think many of us that can relate with this tend to almost internalize this instinctive inherent drive and ambition that we have as admirable and feel bad for those who don't have it. Now, I am an optimist, so I do view this negative childhood sometimes as a trade-off to being able to being so naturally ambitious and driven. But I do think in general, in terms of, therapy and mental healing, that it is important to recognize where these traits come from so they don't end up overpowering you. I think if you become more in touch with yourself and the circumstances that molded you into who you are today, you can then move into a healthier mind space where you are not unnecessarily harsh on yourself or always searching for outside validation. When you view your goals as all or nothing, or my life and my fulfillment and my happiness depends on only this fame or even relationship or job, you truly set yourself up for failure. Achieving your goals, of course, can help better your mental health and your sense of fulfillment, but when all the stakes are on it, if it doesn't work out, it can destroy you. Pearl never did win the competition to become a chorus girl in the movie. After placing all her bets on this future and dream and having it not work out, she has a psychological breakdown and murders her cousin, the projectionist, and her mother. Her mind built up this vision of fame as a cope for her depressing reality, and like I said earlier, sometimes this dream is the only thing keeping many people going. Once it becomes clear that it is not going to happen, people can break down, sinking into depression and suicide ideation, or like Pearl, psychologically breaking from reality. Now, one thing about me is I'm very against absolutism or black and white thinking. This video is in no way intended to paint everyone who is career driven or goal oriented as some traumatized, insecure person, but I do think that for a lot of people that are broken, who keep searching for fame or healing from outside validation, recognizing the real motivations for your goals can go a long way in terms of real fulfillment. When you realize that you may possibly be trying to make up for something that you never really received as a child in the sparkling lights of Hollywood or the promise of wealth and material in your career, you realize fulfillment doesn't really have to do with these things at all. Internal validation and self-worth does not have to be so transactional or something you have to work tireless hours to prove. Anyone and everyone, no matter your situation, can find this validation within themselves and will only ever find it within themselves, and then can begin to live a more authentic, healthy life. Once you rebuild this foundation of confidence and self-acceptance, your goals become a more genuine representation of what you actually want, and success becomes a way to enhance your life, not literally make or break it. You begin to create aspirations that are about fulfillment first, not just a necessary path towards fame, wealth, and admiration. If what you want to do just happens to also come along with fame, then so be it. But it stops being your guiding light, your way out, or the only possible way that you will feel fulfilled. You realize that that missing piece inside of yourself can only and will only ever come from you. And everything else after that begins to be seen as just the icing on the cake.